The camp was quiet in a way that made men uneasy. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that pressed down on the chest and made even hardened soldiers stare too long into their fires. Robb Stark sat alone inside his tent, the crown of the North resting on a wooden table, as if it weighed more than iron. He had worn it for months now, yet some nights it still felt borrowed, like a boy playing at being king while death waited outside. Maps were spread before him, pins marked victories, whispering wood, Oxcross, but his eyes kept drifting to the south, to the twins, to the empty spaces where allies should have been loyal. Every choice he had made echoed back at him, louder at night, when his mother slept and his bannermen drank, and the wind carried whispers of doubt. A shadow moved at the tent entrance. "Enter," Robb said, already knowing who it was. Few men approached him without announcement anymore. Jon Snow stepped inside, dressed in black, the color standing out harshly against the stark gray banners. He looked thinner than the last time Robb had seen him, harder somehow, as if the wall had stripped away what boyhood remained. For a moment they simply stared at one another, brothers by blood and not by law, separated by vows and silence. "You shouldn't be here," Robb said quietly. "If my lords see you—" "They won't," Jon replied. His voice was calm, but there was an edge beneath it. "I didn't come to be seen. I came because the North is bleeding, and no one seems willing to tell you the truth." Robb bristled at that. Too many men spoke carefully around him now, afraid to offend their king. Jon had never learned that skill. It was one of the reasons Robb had always kept him close, and later, one of the reasons he hadn't. "You think I don't know the truth?" Robb asked. "My father is dead. My sisters are prisoners. I'm fighting a war with half the realm against me." Jon stepped closer to the table, his eyes scanning the maps. "You're fighting it wrong." The words hung between them, sharp as a drawn blade. Robb laughed once, without humor. "You sound like my mother, or my uncles. Everyone has advice now. They don't have mine," Jon said, "and they don't know what I know." Robb hesitated. This was the moment where pride usually took over, where he reminded Jon of his place, of vows sworn and names denied. But something inside him was tired of banners that bent too easily, of smiles that hid knives. He thought of men he had trusted who had already failed him. "Speak," Robb said at last. Jon didn't smile. "You're trusting men who love their own power more than the North. You send them off with promises and hostages, and you think honor will hold them. It won't." Robb's jaw tightened. "You mean the phrase." "I mean all of them," Jon replied. "They follow you because you win. The moment you stumble, they'll remember old grudges and new opportunities." Robb slammed his hand on the table. "I am winning. For now," Jon said softly. "But you're bleeding strength. You split your forces, you chase victories instead of endings, and you married for love when you needed fear." The last words struck deep. Robb turned away, his face dark. "You weren't there," he said. "You don't know what it cost me." Jon's voice lowered. "I know exactly what it cost. It cost respect, and in war, respect keeps men alive." Silence followed. The fire crackled. Outside, a wolf howled in the distance, long and lonely. Robb finally faced him again. "Why are you here, Jon, truly?" Jon met his eyes. "Because if you die, the North dies with you. And because no one else will say this to your face." Robb studied him then, really studied him. This wasn't the boy who used to trail after him in Winterfell's yard, wooden sword too big for his hands. This was a man shaped by ice and duty, a man who had nothing to gain by lying. "What would you have me do?" Robb asked. Jon pointed to the maps. "Stop chasing the lion's cubs. Cut off the head. March south with everything. Make the Riverlords follow, not negotiate, and stop trusting oaths that benefit only the men who swear them." "And you?" Robb asked. "What place do you see for yourself in this war?" Jon hesitated. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. "None," he said. "I swore vows. But vows don't mean blindness. Use me as a voice, not a banner. Let me tell you which men will break first." Robb exhaled slowly. He thought of his father, of lessons taught in stone halls and snow-covered yards. He thought of how honor had guided Ned Stark and how it had killed him. For the first time since being crowned, Robb Stark did something dangerous. He trusted his bastard brother. "Stay," Robb said, "for tonight. Tell me everything." Jon nodded. And far from the campfires, unseen and unheard, fate shifted quietly, cruelly preparing a different kind of reckoning. By dawn, the camp felt different. The same banners snapped in the cold wind, the same men sharpened blades and cursed the weather. Yet something unseen had shifted. Robb Stark stood at the edge of the ridge overlooking the riverlands. Jon Snow beside him, both silent as riders came and went with messages and demands. Robb had not slept. Not truly. He had listened. All night Jon had spoken without flattery or fear. He named houses Robb trusted too easily, lords who smiled wide and counted profit in their heads. He spoke of supply lines stretched thin, of men growing loyal to victories rather than causes. And worst of all, he spoke of how stories were spreading faster than army shall. Robb Stark was becoming a legend, yes, but also a boy king who could be bent with the right words. "You let them think you need them," Jon had said near the end, his voice rough with exhaustion. "That's why they test you." Now, with the sun climbing pale and weak, Robb felt the weight of that truth settle into his bones. His mother joined them shortly after, her face tightening when she saw Jon. She said nothing at first, but Robb noticed how her eyes measured the distance between them, how her mouth pressed into a thin line. "We ride at noon," Robb said, before she could speak. "Summon the lords. All of them." Catelyn Stark's brow furrowed. "This isn't the plan we discussed." "I know," Robb replied. "That plan is finished." The council gathered under a long canvas awning. The great Jon laughed too loudly. Karstark watched with cold interest, and others whispered behind raised hands. When Robb stood, the noise faded. "We march south," Robb said. "All of us. No divided hosts. No divided hosts. No favors promised in advance." Murmurs rippled through the group. The phrase, one lord began. "We'll follow," Robb cut in, his voice sharper than before. "Or they won't. Either way, the North will remember." Several men shifted uncomfortably. This was not the Robb Stark they had come to bargain with. Jon stood back, silent, as agreed. Yet Robb felt his presence like a steady hand at his spine. Later that day, a raven arrived. Then another. News traveled faster than expected. Whispers of broken betrothals, of offended pride, of lords who felt slighted. Robb read each message with a calm he did not feel. "They're already pulling away," Catelyn said quietly, once they were alone. "They were always pulling," Robb replied. "I just refused to see it." That night, as rain fell hard against the tents, a rider was brought before them. A Frey cousin, soaked and shaking, bearing polite words wrapped around sharp demands. Apologies, conditions, delays. Robb listened without interruption. Then he said, "Tell your lord I march with or without his bridge, and if I take it without him, I will remember." The rider's face went pale. When he was gone, Catelyn rounded on Robb. "You're forcing their hand." "I'm showing it," Robb answered. "That's the difference." She turned to Jon then, her voice tight. "And this was your counsel?" Jon did not flinch. "Yes." For a long moment it seemed she might strike him. Instead, she looked away. "I pray you're right," she said. "So do I," Jon replied. But prayer had little place in what followed. 2 days later, scouts returned with grim news. Lannister forces were moving faster than expected, regrouping, baiting Robb into a chase he now recognized too well. "They want you angry," Jon said, tracing a finger along the map. "Angry kings make mistakes." Robb nodded slowly. "Then we won't play their game." Orders were sent. Positions shifted. For the first time, Robb did not chase glory. He waited. The waiting hurt. Men grew restless. Lords questioned. Rumors spread that the young wolf had lost his nerve. At night, Robb wondered if they were right. He found Jon sitting alone near the edge of camp, sharpening his sword, though there was no battle ahead. "You ever regret it?" Robb asked suddenly. "Taking the black." Jon didn't look up. "Every day. And not at all." Robb gave a tired smile. I was jealous of you once. Jon paused. Of me, you had freedom, Robb said. Or so I thought. Turns out we both chose cages. Jon finally met his eyes. Then let's make yours count. A horn sounded in the distance, one long blast. Scouts returned at a run. The enemy was moving sooner than expected. Robb rose, heart pounding, crown heavy on his brow. He looked once more at Jon Snow. Stand with me, he said. Not as a king, as a brother. Jon nodded. Always. And somewhere beyond the rain and mud, betrayal was already choosing its moment. The battle did not come the way Robb expected. No proud charge at dawn, no clash of banners beneath a clear sky. It came in pieces, skirmishes in the woods, burned villages, scouts found dead with their throats cut, and lion coins stuffed into their mouths. The Lannisters were not trying to crush him. They were trying to unmake him bit by bit. Robb stood over a crude table listening as his commanders spoke over one another. Each man had a different answer, a different target, a different fear. He felt the old pull to choose quickly, to prove himself decisive. Jon's voice cut through the noise. They want you chasing shadows. The tent went quiet. Robb raised a hand before anyone could object. Explain. They're stretching us, Jon said, forcing you to respond everywhere at once. If you move fast, you move blind. The great Jon snorted. And if we don't move, we look weak. Strength isn't noise, Jon replied evenly. It's control. Robb felt every eye on him now. He took a breath, then made a choice that surprised even himself. We hold, he said. We fortify. We let them come to us. Discontent rolled through the tent, but no one openly defied him. That night, Robb walked the camp alone. Men watched him with uncertain eyes. Some bowed, some only stared. He could feel the cracks forming, the fragile thing that was loyalty tested by hunger and fear. He found Catelyn near the fires, speaking softly to a wounded boy no older than Bran had been when he fell. You're changing, she said once they were alone. I'm learning, Robb answered. She studied his face. Or, you're listening to the wrong voice. Robb looked past her, to where Jon stood speaking with a small group of soldiers, listening more than talking. They looked at him with something close to respect. He's not wrong, Robb said quietly. And neither was Father, just too honest for this world. Catelyn's eyes softened at that. Honesty isn't weakness, she said, but trust can be. Before Robb could reply, horns sounded again, short, urgent. A messenger burst in, breathless. Lord Karstark's men? They attacked without orders. They ambushed a Lannister column. Robb's blood ran cold. Casualties. High. On both sides. The tent erupted. Rage. Fear. Accusation. Robb felt the crown dig into his brow like thorns. They disobeyed me, he said, voice steady but deadly. Jon leaned in close. This is the moment they're watching. Break now, and they'll tear you apart. Robb closed his eyes for a heartbeat. When he opened them, his voice carried iron. Summon Lord Karstark. Karstark arrived defiant, grief burning behind his eyes. He spoke of sons lost, of vengeance owed. The old Robb might have tried to soothe him, to bargain. This Robb did not. You endangered the North, Robb said. You acted for yourself, not for us. Karstark spat at his feet. You'd rather listen to a bastard than a true lord? The word cracked through the tent like a whip. Hands went to sword hilts. Jon stiffened, but said nothing. Robb stepped forward. You will address him with respect, he said, or you will leave my service. The silence that followed was heavy, shocked. Karstark laughed bitterly. You've chosen him over us. No, Robb replied. I've chosen the North. No, Robb replied. I've chosen the North. Karstark was taken away, his banners withdrawn by nightfall. Another crack, another loss. That evening, Robb sat alone, staring at the fire, doubt gnawing at him. Was that a mistake? He asked softly. Jon sat beside him. Maybe, but weakness would have been worse. Robb nodded slowly. I'm bleeding allies. You're cutting rot, Jon said. It always hurts. A raven arrived near midnight. News from the twins. The Freys were stalling, demanding assurances. Time. Robb crushed the parchment in his fist. They think I'll come crawling. Jon's eyes were hard. Then don't. Outside, thunder rolled. War was no longer a distant thing. It was inside the camp now, and every whispered doubt, every glance at the crown. Robb Stark had trusted Jon Snow, and the price of that trust was becoming clear. The crossing came at dawn, wrapped in mist so thick it swallowed banners and men alike. Robb Stark rode at the front, his horse's breath steaming, his jaw set. There was no grand welcome waiting on the far bank, no smiling Frey daughters or musicians playing false cheer, only silence, and the slow creak of the bridge as if it resented every step. Walder Frey did not come out to greet him. That alone told Robb everything. They made camp on the near side, the river cold and gray, cutting the world in two. Robb dismounted and stared across the water, feeling the weight of every choice pressing down on him. They're waiting for you to beg, Catelyn said quietly. They'll wait a long time, Robb replied. Jon stood beside him, eyes narrowed. They think the bridge gives them power. It does, but only if you need it. Robb turned to him. We do need it. Yes, Jon said. But they need you more. Without you, they're nothing but a toll booth in a burning land. That night, Robb did something no one expected. He sent half his army away, not south, east. Whispers exploded through the camp. Desertion, madness, surrender. Lord stormed into his tent demanding answers. You're tearing your own strength apart, one shouted. Robb did not rise. He did not shout back. He simply said, I'm showing Lord Frey how small his bridge truly is. By morning, ravens were flying from the twins in panic. Frey scouts reported Stark forces bypassing the river entirely, burning supply routes, taking smaller crossings, turning the twins into an island surrounded by enemies. Walder Frey sent a messenger before noon. The old man still did not come himself. Lord Frey invites the king in the north to parley, the messenger said stiffly. Robb smiled without warmth. Now he remembers my name. The meeting took place in a drafty hall, stripped of ceremony. Walder Frey sat high, thin-lipped, eyes sharp with resentment. You've cost me coin, Walder said without greeting. And you cost the North time, Robb replied. We're even. Walder's gaze flicked to Jon. I see the bastard advises you now. Robb's hand tightened on his sword hilt. You'll address him properly. Walder's smile vanished. Or what? Or you'll learn how lonely castles become when the world turns against them. The air grew cold. Walder leaned back slowly. You want my bridge? I want loyalty, Robb said. Or neutrality. Choose one. Walder laughed, thin and sharp. You've already broken one oath? What stops you from breaking another? Robb did not look away. Nothing. That's why you should fear me now more than you ever did before. For a long moment, Walder Frey studied him, seeing not a boy king, but something harder, something dangerous. You may cross, Walder said at last. No feast, no promises. That will do, Robb said, rising. Outside, Catelyn exhaled in relief. Jon only nodded. But relief did not last. That night, Jon woke to steel at his throat. A hand clamped over his mouth. He rolled, fighting until a familiar voice hissed, quiet. It was a Stark man. Blood on his hands, fear in his eyes. They're moving, the man whispered. Not Freys, our own. Lords who think you've gone too far. Jon's heart hammered. Robb, they want him dead. Tonight. Jon pert. They want him dead. Tonight. Jon was on his feet in an instant, grabbing his sword. They ran through the dark corridors, boots slipping on stone. Shouts erupted behind them. A scream cut short. They reached Robb's chambers to find the door splintered, guards dead. Inside, Robb stood with his sword drawn, blood on his sleeve, eyes wild. So, Robb said, breathing hard, it's come to this. Men flooded, the hall's Stark men, river lords, faces twisted by fear and ambition. "You've lost us," one shouted. "You listen to him and call it wisdom." Robb raised his voice. "I listen to truth." Steel flashed. Chaos exploded. Jon moved without thought, back to back with Robb, blades rising and falling, brothers forged in blood. When it ended, bodies littered the floor. Survivors fled into the night. Robb stared at the carnage, chest heaving. "There's no going back now," he said. Jon wiped his blade clean. There never was. Outside, the river flowed on, uncaring, and somewhere far south, lions smiled. Morning revealed what the night had truly cost. Blood stained the stone corridors of the twins, and whispers moved faster than servants. By sunrise, every lord in the camp knew the truth. Robb Stark had survived an attempt on his life, and those who failed had either fled or died where they stood. Fear replaced doubt. Robb stood before his assembled banners, his face pale but his spine straight. He did not speak at first. He let them look at him, at the cut on his arm, at the dried blood on his cloak, let them understand that something had broken, and something sharper had taken its place. "I was crowned to protect the North," Robb said at last, "not to beg for it." No cheers followed, only silence. The kind that listens. Last night, men swore loyalty and raised blades in the same breath. That ends now. He gestured, and guards dragged forward 3 prisoners' lords' sons, shaking, eyes wide with terror. They plotted against their king, Robb continued, against the North. Cries erupted. "Please, promises." Robb closed his eyes for a brief moment, then he opened them. "Take the black," he said, "or take the sword." The shock was immediate, exile to the wall instead of execution. Mercy cold but calculated. Jon felt something tighten in his chest. He understood the choice better than anyone. By nightfall, ravens flew north. The wall would soon receive men who had once called Jon bastard, with curled lips. Catelyn found Robb later, standing alone near the river. "You've changed the rules," she said quietly. "I had to," Robb replied. "They were killing me with them." She hesitated. "And Jon?" Robb replied at fur. He watched his reflection in the water, distorted, broken. "He's my shadow now," Robb said. "If they want me, they'll have to see him too." The march south resumed, but it was no longer a hopeful army chasing glory. It was a hardened force moving with purpose. The Lannisters felt it almost at once. Scouts returned with reports of hesitation, withdrawals, traps left unused. "They don't know who you are anymore," Jon said as they studied the map. "Neither do I," Robb admitted. "But they're afraid." Fear bought time. Time bought victories. A supply column fell without a fight. A fortified village opened its gates. River lords who had wavered returned, quieter, more obedient. Then the Raven came. White Harbor, betrayal uncovered, letters intercepted. Bolton, Robb crushed the parchment slowly. "I trusted him," he said. Jon's jaw tightened. "He wears loyalty like a borrowed cloak." Robb looked up sharply. "You knew?" "I suspected," Jon replied. "I didn't have proof." Robb nodded. "Then we end it." The trap was set carefully. Robb sent false orders, leaked routes, feigned weakness. Bolton men moved exactly as predicted. The confrontation was swift and ugly. No speeches, no mercy. When it was done, Roose Bolton knelt in chains. His calm finally cracked. "You're becoming something worse than your enemies," Roose said quietly. Robb met his gaze. "No. I'm becoming what this war requires." Bolton was sent north under heavy guard, his banners stripped. That night, Robb and Jon shared wine for the first time since Winterfell. "I used to think trusting you made me weak," Robb said. "Now I know not trusting you nearly killed me." Jon gave a small, tired smile. "The world doesn't reward blind honor." Robb raised his cup. To seeing clearly, they drank. But clarity did not mean peace. Far away, in halls untouched by war, plans were being rewritten. Kings adjusted their games. Alliances shifted. The young wolf had not fallen. And that frightened everyone. Winter announced itself early, as if the world sensed the change in Robb Stark and answered in kind. Snow fell thick and wet. slowing the march, dulling sound, turning the land into something quiet and watchful. The army moved like a single creature now. Fewer voices raised, fewer arguments whispered behind tents. Men obeyed because they feared, and feared because they believed. That belief was dangerous. Robb felt it every time someone knelt too quickly or avoided his eyes. He had wanted loyalty. What he was getting was obedience. The Lannisters finally met them on ground of Robb's choosing, a narrow valley. Forests thick on both sides, the kind of place where numbers mattered less than preparation. Robb stood over the map, hands steady. "They'll push hard," he said. "They think I'm desperate to finish this." "They think wrong," Jon replied. The battle was brutal and short. Stark arrows rained down from the trees. The valley became a trap of mud and blood. When it was over, the lion banners burned, and survivors fled south in disarray. The North had won its greatest victory yet. And still, Robb did not smile. That night, celebration broke out despite his mood. Men drank, songs were sung. The young wolf's name echoed into the dark. Jon found Robb alone again, sitting by a dying fire. "You did it," Jon said. "This changes everything." Robb stared into the embers. "It changes me." Robb stared into the embers. "It changes me." Jon frowned. "You saved lives today." "I ended them too," Robb replied, "and I didn't hesitate." He looked up, eyes sharp. "That frightens me." Jon sat beside him. "It should. If it doesn't, you're lost." Silence stretched between them, comfortable but heavy. A raven arrived near dawn. King's Landing was burning with rumor. The crown was weak, allies uncertain. A path was opening, one that could end the war. "They'll want you to come south," Jon said after reading the message, "to claim more than the North." Robb folded the parchment slowly. "They'll want a king who can finish this." Jon studied him carefully. "Do you want to be that king?" Robb did not answer right away. When he did, his voice was low. "I don't know if I can stop once I start." That answer stayed with Jon. Days later, another raven came. Different news. Colder. From the wall. Dead things were walking. The Night's Watch was breaking. The true war was coming, and it did not care about crowns or banners. Jon read the message twice, then handed it to Robb. Robb's face drained of color. "This isn't politics." "No," Jon said. "This is the end of everything, if we're blind enough to ignore it." Robb stood, decision hardening in his eyes. "Then the war ends now, one way or another." He looked at Jon, really looked at him, not as a shadow or an advisor, but as a brother forged in fire. "You'll ride north," Robb said, "with half my army." Jon blinked. "Robb, you were right from the start," Robb continued. "About enemies, about truth. I won't ignore this one." Jon bowed his head slightly. "Then I'll hold the line. And I'll finish the South," Robb said. Fast, they clasped forearms, no vows, no speeches, only understanding. As the army split and banners went their separate ways, the world seemed to hold its breath. History had already broken once. Now it was bending toward something no one had planned for. One part left. The world did not end all at once. It unraveled slowly, the way cloth does when pulled too hard at one thread. Jon Snow rode north with men who had once mocked him, cursed him, doubted him. Now they followed, without question, not because he wore a crown, but because they had seen him stand when others fled. The wall rose before them, older than memory, cracked and weary, manned by brothers who looked at the Stark banners with something close to hope. Robb Stark rode south, faster and harder than any king before him. He did not waste time on ceremony or mercy. Cities opened their gates or burned. Lords bent the knee or vanished into cells and chains. The war ended not with a song, but with exhaustion. When the Iron Throne finally fell into silence, no one cheered. Robb did not sit on it. He sent word instead. The North would remain free. The South could keep its poisoned seat and broken games. He had seen enough crowns to know what they cost. In the far North, the dead came with the cold. They came in numbers no story had prepared men for. Jon stood on the wall as the first wave broke against it, steel ringing, fire screaming, men dying afraid. They held. Barely. When the ravens flew south, Robb answered without hesitation. He left unfinished grudges behind and marched north with everything he had left. Two kings' wars met in the snow. Brothers stood beside brother again beneath a sky without mercy. The battle against the dead was not heroic. It was ugly. Screams froze in the air. Fire ran low. Men broke. Robb nearly died when his horse went down beneath him, clawed hands dragging him toward the dark. Jon reached him in time, sword breaking, arm bleeding, rage carrying him forward when strength failed. They survived because they trusted. When dawn finally came, it rose over silence. The dead did not retreat. They were destroyed. The cost was unbearable. Half the north lay frozen where they fell. The wall stood, but barely. Victory tasted like ash. In the days that followed, as pyres burned and names were spoken softly, Robb and Jon walked the edge of the world together. "I wouldn't have made it without you," Robb said at last. Jon shook his head. "You made the choice. I just stood with you." Robb stopped. Snow fell between them, light and endless. "I trusted you," Robb said. "That changed everything." Jon met his gaze. "Trust is a weapon," he said, "and a shield." They returned to Winterfell not as conquerors, but as survivors. Robb ruled the North wisely and briefly. He refused psalms, refused statues, refused lies. Years later, when he finally laid down his crown, he did so alive, something few kings could claim. Jon Snow never ruled. He never needed to. His name became something quieter, heavier. A story fathers told sons when teaching them the cost of duty. History remembered Robb Stark as the king who learned too late, but not too late to matter, and it remembered Jon Snow as the brother who was finally trusted. The North endured. Because one choice was different.